left me waiting out in the cold. I know you try so hard to be so hard to get, but I can hear the way you talk under your breath. I wanna love her, I can't avoid. I see your picture with other boys. The only one that gives me hell. Sometimes I feel like I'm just talking to myself. Far away, you got me standing in the outfield. By the way, sometimes it's almost like you're not real. I always thought that I would get to you someday. I'm getting closer, but I'm still so far away. You got me standing in the outfield. I wanna touch you, I lose control. Don't want another, I need your soul. Oh, tonight I'm just another toy left on the floor. Sometimes I feel like walking up to your front door. Hey, I'm so far away. You got me standing in the outfield. By the way, sometimes it's almost like you're not real. I always thought that I would get to you someday. I'm getting closer, but I'm still so far away. You got me standing in the outfield. You know I want you, do you wanna let me on it? If you wanna tell me why you gotta be so hard to get. You know I want you, do you wanna let me on it? If you wanna tell me why you gotta be so hard to get. Far away, you got me standing in the outfield. By the way, sometimes it's almost like you're not real. Oh, I always thought that I would get to you someday, and I'm getting closer, but I'm still so far away. You got me standing in the outfield. Oh, you know I want you, do you wanna let me on it? If you wanna tell me why you gotta be so hard to get. You know I want you, do you wanna let me on it? If you wanna tell me why you gotta be so hard to get. I wouldn't be who I am without you. Without a father who showed me I can face all the bullies at school. You taught me how to keep my cool. I wouldn't be who I am.
You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens out there, it's the Red Moon Podcast. That's right. I'm bringing back a classic.
Wow.
Nobody's referenced Tiger King in a while.
Classic? Has it been long enough to be a classic?
It is now.
Yeah.
I'm one
Did
of
you
your
see
hosts.
that she was awarded?
No.
She owns his thing now.
She does.
Yeah, the courts
Oh my
awarded her.
gosh.
She owns
it?
She owns the Tiger King zoo or whatever now.
Wow.
From all the lawsuits that have been constantly going on, they're
It
like
finally came.
Yeah.
Wow.
now she owns it. She
Well,
finally did it. She put him out of business.
She put him out. Tiger King is truly no more.
Jeez, I did
He's
not
locked
know that.
away. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host.
Sean Sebastian.
And
Keith Cheatham.
so we start off with breaking news there.
Yeah, breaking. Not really. It's
Well,
like
it's-
a week and a half old.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Breaking for us.
I really
you know.
didn't think about doing it that way. I just introed because, nobody's talked about Tiger King in a while. That was a phenomenon at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
It's a little old now, but hey, it's still alive and well, okay, on Netflix. Go watch it.
Or not.
But we've got enough news to cover, okay, this week. We've got a lot breaking, a lot going on. Oscars being pushed back.
Yep.
We've got some new inclusionary methods that are going to be enforced. Gone with the Wind is no more. It is gone with the wind. Cats and dogs living together. Mass chaos.
Mass hysteria.
Hysteria, yeah.
Sorry, I screwed
See,
that
every
one
time
up.
he quotes
I
a movie,
do.
he gets it wrong.
I am the worst at movie quotes. I will admit. I can't do it. I
It's
just
like
can't remember
he tries
a
to
line.
do Jurassic Park, and he's like, well, there it goes.
Actually, it's funny because Keith sent me that meme this week.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I finally found his camera strap.
Yeah.
Oh.
He
In
bought
my-
since he's had my camera, like he couldn't find it, so he didn't think he had it here. So he loaned me his camera strap to use for a while. And then the other day, he sends me his picture, like, "Look what I found in my office." So I sent him that meme of Jeff Goldblum going,
he's like,
"Well, there it is."
Well, there it is.
But no, we do have a lot going on in this episode.
We do.
So much that I guess we're going to dive into another phenomenal Best Picture, right?
You know, the longer.
Silence is violence.
Yes.
Oh no.
When it comes to this movie, it's
Yeah.
not.
The longer we do this, the more I'm beginning to think that the Academy's just always been off their rocker.
Yeah.
It's like y'all have never been like as prestigious as you act like you are.
we're realizing it is so hit and miss.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're just realizing how much the Academy is just a member of the times, and that's it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think that with it being so early in film history, a lot of these movies that they just didn't know better. But it's like, what's their excuse now after decades
Yeah.
of great films? Why are they still voting for Moonlight?
like Brandon said, I think it is kind of the Academy just has always had
Yeah.
this, like, instead of picking films that are timeless, that stand the test of time, they're just like, well, what's important to us right now? And
It's like
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like they go on stretches where it's like every 5 years they get one. I mean, early on we had Wings, we had All Quiet, but I mean, with
still have- I
Cavalcade,
mean, It Happened One
Cimarron
Night was great.
I know, but and
Yeah.
that was 3 years after like terrible ones.
yeah.
So it really is just kind of hit or miss.
I told Brandon, to me, what it feels like is rather than choosing the films that are timeless, they pick the ones they want and try to make them timeless by giving them
True.
the Best Picture nom. And it's
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just because it wins Best Picture doesn't
Doesn't-
automatically
yeah.
make it a timeless movie.
No. And you mentioned before that when we were doing our segment for Great Day Live that not even critics back then all praised it, but a lot of the critics that had negative things to say about it were never really heard.
No, they were
So,
rare, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
So it's
typically,
interesting.
I think that's typically a sign of what we see with movies that are in high regard, or especially have that high acclaim. We've talked about that, I think, a number of times on the show here over the last 5 years that we've been doing this podcast, just in the sense that there's been multiple times where there's been split critical reviews versus audience scores, and how those disparaging differences between the two have become more and more important, I think, across the landscape of films in which we view them.
Yeah.
So I think as the I guess wise community out there continues to consume films and take the time to actually review them properly, they don't sometimes always land on the same side as the professionals. But I think we do have one of those films this week. Keith, wouldn't you agree? You did a review, as you always do.
I hope he did.
I did a review, and I think it'll say pretty much everything I have to say about this movie. So let's go ahead and hear it. The great Ziegfeld may have lived larger than life, but the Best Picture winning biopic based on his life is anything but great. Released in 1936, The Great Ziegfeld was once considered the pride of MGM, the studio that released it, garnering critical praise and grossing over $4 million, a massive intake at the time. With a runtime of nearly 3 hours, it was also considered the longest musical ever made during its time. With extravagant show-stopping numbers based on the real-life Ziegfeld's review-style shows, The Great Ziegfeld once inspired awe. Not everyone at the time was impressed, though, with the rare critics who disliked the film calling it a bloated mess. In more recent years, the film has been criticized for being an exercise in sheer excess with little else to offer. So how does the 9th Best Picture winner stack up to its predecessors, and does it contain that timeless quality that we here at Red Moon judge all Best Picture winners by? Much like Cimarron and Cavalcade before it, The Great Ziegfeld was supposed to be a film that spanned many years. More specifically in this case, covering the life of Florence Edward Ziegfeld. Just like those other Best Picture winners, The Great Ziegfeld was touted for its scope, but also like those movies, scope is all it really has to offer, and really not even that. The story of Florence Ziegfeld is an interesting one, but modern biopics typically exhume the more dull and humdrum parts of their topics' lives, while highlighting the more fascinating and entertaining parts. Ziegfeld gives us the over-the-top and outlandish man and the parts of his life that were noteworthy, but also spends far too long building to each benchmark in Ziegfeld's life. When critics chastise the film for being an overbloated mess, they are not wrong. Unlike Cavalcade, which has been affectionately dubbed a cacophony of confusion by Red Moon's own Brandon Davidson, at least The Great Ziegfeld won't induce a seizure, with an easy-to-follow plot and solid cinematography. The film is well made by director Robert Z. Leonard and doesn't have many technical faults. Incorporating many of the performances that actually premiered in Ziegfeld's Follies, the real Florence Ziegfeld Theater Review, Leonard does an excellent job of pulling off the extravagant show numbers. The problem, however, is watching a live theatrical performance of singers, dancers, and vaudeville acts versus watching them imitated on film is an entirely different experience, in the attempt of shoehorning Ziegfeld's Follies into an already bloated biopic of Ziegfeld himself creates a film that isn't entertaining enough to justify a 3-hour runtime. Scope should include more than just a long period of time. Scope should cover the subject's trials and tribulations, their emotions, the real-life adversities the person overcame throughout the period of time on film. That's how you create scope, not by giving a film a 3-hour runtime. The characters as displayed on film are likable, and the actors and actresses involved give entertaining and humorous performances. The over-the-top nature of the film, while sometimes derided in modern circles, in my opinion just add to the vaudeville nature of the story. Where the film fails isn't in its exuberant set pieces, exaggerated acting, or its production, but in its excess. The Great Ziegfeld is now used as a film to point towards the extravagance of the Hollywood Golden Age, but to me it's not the extravagance of the Golden Age that this film represents, but instead it points towards the unnecessary excess of the Golden Age and a Hollywood that hasn't just been out of touch with the average Joe in recent years, but one that's always been out of touch with the common person. I give The Great Ziegfeld 2 out of 4 stars.
Wow, 2 out of 4 stars for another Best Picture winner. So, Sean, how much stuff did you get done in Animal Crossing?
I did play Animal Crossings almost entirely through the movie.
I
I got about maybe 30 or 40 minutes in, and I was just like, I'm going to get the Switch out
Yeah.
and play that. Now, I did look up and listen. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I turned the volume down on my game, and I did listen to everything.
Trust me, that's all you have to do to pay
but
attention.
it really was just a boring film.
Yes.
After about, to me, at about the 1 hour mark was where I was just,
Tapping out.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it just, when you get through it and like you said, like that 1 hour mark, it's still nothing of notes really happened. I'm
Yeah.
just like, I still have 2 more hours of this.
To be fair, I didn't even know it was that long. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, is this ever going to be over so I can go to bed?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
You're
but I
sitting there
did.
thinking you're going to watch like an hour movie.
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
not an
and a
hour,
half.
but still, it was just
Yeah.
like, gosh.
That's no.
I just didn't pay attention to the runtime.
Yeah, that was actually one thing that shocked me. I didn't see it until the day before I watched it.
Yeah.
And when I saw 2 hours and 56 minutes, I thought, oh, God,
Yeah.
this is going to be awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about just that decade in general and knowing, like, okay, Gone with the Wind is 4.
Yeah,
but I can stand that.
That's a good movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, maybe.
You've never seen it?
No,
we'll get
no.
we'll
We'll
get
get to the controversy.
Yeah, we'll get there.
But the thing is I completely agree as well. I thought that this was simply a movie that we've already had. This is the 9th film. We're almost a decade through the first set of Academy Awards, and I think what the most disappointing thing about this was we've suffered through Cavalcade, we've suffered through Cimarron, we've seen these grand sweeping epics of several decades pass. And it was funny because I will say that, the first hour of the film is somewhat interesting. You're kind of wrapped up into who this character is. What is he going to do to get out of the debacle of trying to make it as, I honestly just thought it was like a struggling entrepreneur type film.
Yeah,
and he's going to somehow, because of a sly character, his way with words and way with people, he's going to be able to get himself out of this rut.
Yeah.
And then it becomes like literally, I think throughout the movie, there's 4 times where he goes through the same rinse and repeat model.
Yeah.
And it's just ridiculously.
It was like a really bad version of Uncut Gems.
Yes, I was going to. Thank you. I was
Yes.
actually just about to mention.
I'm
that.
sorry.
No, but you're right. There were so many. Like I kept watching this movie, and there were other movies I thought like Uncut Gems. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
he gets ahead, and then he blows it all away. And then I thought, like the whole vaudeville nature made me think of The Greatest Showman.
Yeah, it's very
and I'm like,
reminiscent.
and
Yes.
both of those movies are shy of 2 hours and very good. And I'm sitting here thinking, this movie's 3 hours long and has nothing in it. Like they go through, and granted, I know The Greatest Showman is a very fictionalized version of P.T. Barnum's life, but
Right.
still, they go through P.T. Barnum's life, or
And a musical
the
at
most
that,
significant part of P.T.
Yes.
Barnum's life, in about 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas this movie's 3 hours long, it doesn't even show you half of what's in that movie.
Yeah.
and
And it
that's-
had some good comedy towards the beginning. I felt
Yeah.
like there were moments when I was laughing at. I really thought right towards the beginning it was really funny when they've got the 2 people are standing on either side of the street from each other and they're trying to get people to come to their
Yeah.
show. No, come to my show. And then one guy says, he's like, I'll give you a taste of the dance, just a tease of the dance that's going to
Yeah.
happen in here. And the lady just like shakes for like 3 seconds. And then he's like, just a tease or just
Yeah.
a sample.
I thought
And I'm just like,
the-
that's funny because
yeah.
it's just like, no, I'm not going to show you the whole thing. You got to come inside and pay me money.
The the Sandow character, the world's strongest man, I thought he
Yes,
was hilarious.
that was
he was
hilarious.
funny. I mean,
Yeah.
when they like, he doesn't want the woman touching his muscles.
Yeah.
and, like he's just like sitting there, and you can tell he's like he's uncomfortable the whole time.
Yeah.
But then even the guy that comes up to deliver the telegrams, and he's just like he has this weird, wacky, crazy laugh. And he only does it twice.
Those big teeth.
But the thing was that caught me off guard, and the first time that it happened, I laughed hysterically because I was
Yeah.
like, that was out of nowhere.
I know.
But I mean, and it was weird because there was even a point where I think the part we're talking about with the strong man and the women touching his muscles, I thought that happened within the first like 15 minutes. No, that was in the first hour.
Yeah.
It was.
And
yeah.
when
Later
you
in the
all
movie.
told me that, I was shocked because I was sitting here and I was thinking,
Like nothing happens up to that point.
nothing
really.
happens. But then I was also shocked because I'm like, well, at least they got the first hour right
Yeah.
because I didn't think I was watching for an hour.
The first
But
like,
man,
the
it
first
drags
third
after that.
was entertaining. And honestly, like when it starts up and that scene with him, like the thing that I noted most and that it got me excited, and then I lost that excitement about an hour through the movie was, and it's a silly thing to be excited about. The guy that plays like the competition actor Frank Morgan is the wizard from Wizard of Oz.
Yes. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and when I
noticed
saw
that.
him, like, because he had that
You
same
hear his
like
voice
showy,
and you recognize his voice
but he had that
immediately.
same showy personality. I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun because he was a lot of fun in the Wizard of Oz. And then it just drug on, and it's like, okay, now the fun's gone.
Yes. I mean, it did not need an intermission. It literally needed half the film cut.
Yeah.
It could have been told in an hour and a half. There was one piece in it, one musical number, which, granted, I know that you had mentioned this before after you finished cutting your review. You were saying that they call us a musical. It's not really a musical.
Yeah, I mentioned in the review it was considered at the time which I think Les Mis is now the longest musical, but at the time it was considered like the longest musical on film or whatever. And I'm like, but it's not a musical.
It's
like,
not.
I mean, there are some song numbers, but just because like you have like people on stage performing a song number doesn't make the movie a musical.
And
Yeah.
but that was the thing. There was literally one piece in it that I actually liked.
Yeah.
And I thought that one, as far as the production design and the way it was honestly just one solitary shot, but the way the set was created helped kind of move that piece along, and it became more interesting as it went on. But other than that, all of their other set pieces I was bored with after 5 minutes, and I just wanted the pace to pick up. And then it came to the same thing with the exposition parts. I mean, it literally was like exposition, a musical, number or melody, an exposition, then boom, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And it was like every single time there was this big grandiose number, then it would be back to a scene of, oh, here he is in trouble again. He needs more money. He needs to get a new set of people up and running. And it just, it was, I was just tired of it. And I really did. I was like, how much longer is on this film? And I had 30 minutes left at that point.
All honesty, the most entertainment I got out of the movie was reading about all the behind the scenes stuff, like when I was going to write my review. Like the movie itself was garbage, but all the stuff that happened behind the scenes and went into making the movie, I was like, that stuff was really cool and interesting.
Should have made a movie about that.
Yeah.
Make a movie about making a movie.
Yeah. They could nowadays. The Disaster
they
Artist.
could.
Exactly.
It's a great movie. But
It
no,
is.
I agree, Keith. It's just like so much in this was just, again, I think it's a problem that we're seeing with these earlier films in the industry. I think it truly is, scope and high production value that they're trying to get away with being part of what sells people. Now, granted, I understand that back then, and even nowadays, I mean, spectacle goes into why people go to the theater. I mean, there is a difference. We talk about seeing Christopher Nolan's films in IMAX.
Yeah.
I know that going to the theater back then was kind of an all-afternoon adventure. If you pay your money, you want to get your money's worth, and you're getting more than that with 3 hours. But I would contest that you're not getting a lot for that, whether it was a nickel or not. It's like this movie is absolutely...
It's like, I pay my money, I don't want to fall asleep in the middle of
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's exactly what I felt with this movie. I just felt that even though back then they're trying to hit that spectacle note like they did with Cavalcade and Cimarron, and they're hoping that the set pieces are what draw people in and what make them amazed, I'm bored. And it's not, and I know people will say, well, now you're just tainted. You're tainted because of what you've seen today.
Yes and no, because like I said, we talked about it off screen, but it's like, but you can even go back and look at movies of that era, like King Kong, It Happened One Night, Lady for a Day, the war movie that aired this.
Quiet.
I mean, there's so many movies from that era that were better. So it's like, if I can see movies from back then that I still think are amazing today, then the Best Picture winner needs to be a movie that I think is still amazing
And
today.
that's something that I think we're still, obviously, it's hard. I mean, 3 hours is enough for 1 week, but it's hard enough to already just review the amount of films that we're doing in terms of all the Best Picture winners.
It's hard, yeah.
But the fact is we've talked about it several times off camera, just in person, about how we would like to eventually see the other films that these were up against.
See some of the competition,
so we can see the competition and say, okay, no, this definitely should have won, because we've had those reservations about films within the recent past. The past several years of Academy Award Best Picture winners, and when they got it right or when we thought they got it wrong.
Yeah.
So definitely, I couldn't agree more. 2 out of 4 stars, which is honestly a little bit better than I'm really feeling in the pit of my stomach.
I think this may actually be the first one that we all gave the exact, because I think
Yeah.
all of us were off by at least a half a star or such on most of them, but I think this is the first one that we've all been the same across the board.
I was shooting at 1.5, but I settled on 2.
Yeah.
Because I did enjoy the first hour of the movie, so I feel like I got to give it a little bit of credit.
That's how I felt. Like, I liked the humor, I liked the characters. It drug on way too long, and by the end of it, I no longer cared about the characters.
It was a good movie to play Nintendo. Too.
Get some Switch hours.
So you got to give it that. Yeah,
that's true.
Real quick, if you have time, we did have another review that got sent in through an email.
Yes.
Can I just read that real fast?
Absolutely.
It's kind of an older movie, but this is from Neil and Megan, our friends in Boston. They haven't really written in a while, or Neil hadn't reviewed a movie in a long time. But they recently watched A Simple Favor from 2018. It's one that we definitely haven't watched or reviewed. And he says that, just briefly, the movie was listed as a comedy mystery. When they watched it, it definitely had a thriller vibe. Directed by Paul Feig, which we have our own
words
thoughts about him.
Mixed feelings,
But Neil says, all seriousness, this was a weirdly good movie. Anna Kendrick, Blake Lively play their respective stereotypes very well. The story goes from cute to weird to intense and back again several times. He just says, I don't want to give it away, but if you haven't seen it, it's absolutely worth a view. 3.5 out of 4 stars from both of them.
And sometimes Neil
So-
can be kind of harsh on stuff.
Yeah,
so
he's overly critical sometimes.
So,
So
yeah.
now it kind of makes me want to see it. A simple favor from 2018.
I'm not gonna lie. I actually have heard a lot of good things about that movie.
I have to check that one
Back
out.
when it came out, it was kind of a underappreciated, just sleeper. I don't even say a sleeper hit. It just kind of went off the radar.
Yeah.
But it got a lot of good reviews when it first came out, and it intrigued me mainly because Blake Lively's in it.
Sure.
For
But
me, Anna Kendrick. I mean, that's
yeah.
Sure.
better than Blake Lively.
Wow. Wow, we're gonna have a debate on that one. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
2-1 on that one.
But thank you, Neil, for writing in. And Sean, it's right there at the bottom of your screen. We're doing it early.
What?
Yeah.
The RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com?
Holy crap, man.
Or do I go this way?
It was that way, but still,
Well,
you nailed
you
it.
know.
You nailed it.
You just
Whoop. Tickling it. There he is.
I did whoop.
That's right. RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com. Email us on our topics that we're discussing, or even your own movie review. Let us know. We see it. We check it. We don't respond right away.
Neil says it's on Hulu, by the way. If you
Okay.
subscribe to
Oh, I
Hulu,
have
you can
Hulu.
watch it on there.
Okay. Cool.
Oh,
Awesome. Well, we appreciate that, Neil. Thank you.
I was like, I have Hulu, and I was like, well, that's Neil has my Hulu. That's how he watched it.
What? Your password sharing? Oh, my. Okay.
If they only knew how we got our screeners. I'm just saying.
True.
All right, guys. Are we ready to move on to our headline topic this week? We got 3 major headline topics.
Ah,
A lot of news this past week.
Oh,
Our
man.
first one, obviously the big news right out of the gate. Oscars has been pushed back to April of next year. April
Yeah.
25th, to be exact. That's right. They're not happening. Well, they were already pushed back for this year.
Yeah.
This was going to be
Yeah.
the first year that they were going to be going to the. Was it the? Was
They
it
were doing it-
into March?
no, they said
Beginning of
they said
March?
it was originally supposed to be February 21st.
Oh,
Because that's now
okay,
the
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
It was early February before.
Yeah.
But now
That was the end of
this
February.
past year was the first year they had pushed it back to the end of February.
Yeah.
And then now
We're
they
at
were-
like
you know,
April,
yeah,
what, 20?
April 25th.
25th.
So closer to May.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously that also extends the eligibility period.
Until their original airing on a February 21st.
Yes. Okay.
So,
So films that come out up until then.
which I mean, I get it. It's like we've had all these dead months with no new movies. They still want to like give people a chance to have like. Plus, it gives them more content because if they only have like 6 months worth to go off
Yeah,
of,
I agree with that.
I think they want to be able to incorporate as many films as
Yes.
possible and still have a good amount of nominees, which they're
Agreed.
changing that anyways.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll
get to that.
That's our next
Um,
topic. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I understand why they pushed it back, and I don't have a problem with that.
I don't
Yeah.
either. I think obviously it's kind of it is a no-brainer because truth be told, they're already making the exceptions. We talked about this several months ago with video on demand. However, it has to have had an intended theatrical release, but they will be allowing those to be eligible for nomination as well for this year only.
So you got to think like all the blockbusters have been pushed back to like November.
Yeah.
So if all the
Yeah.
blockbusters are airing in like September, November, then these smaller films are going to get drowned out by the blockbusters anyway. So it makes sense that they push the Oscars back so that the smaller films that tend to get nominated have a chance to come out and still be seen.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you start releasing all these smaller Oscar nominees up against Black Widow and Jurassic World, I'm sorry, those
Well,
movies
who's
are
to
going.
say that those aren't nomination worthy?
They're not.
Just
yeah.
Jurassic World definitely is
well,
not.
okay, I would agree with you there. Who knows about Black Widow?
I doubt it, but
That's
say
going to
who
be a
knows?
good movie, but nah,
Yeah, I mean,
Black Panther was good too, but it wasn't Oscar worthy.
Ooh, shots
Sorry.
fired.
I'm
No.
just saying. Not
I-
many Marvel movies are
No,
Oscar worthy.
I don't think
Agreed.
really any of them have.
No.
Like, I mean, I love them. Trust me, I love
Endgame
them.
was
but
the only one that I thought.
that could
And,
have been.
and
yeah.
the reason why is yes, for I guess we already kind of argued about this with the Great Ziegfeld or Ziegfeld,
Ziegfeld.
whatever it's called. I truthfully think that sometimes certain nominations are warranted for at least scope and grandeur, and not to say that.
I think when you have something on the scale of what Marvel and the MCU has done for it to
Yes.
culminate in a game like that, like I can understand why you would give them maybe not Best Picture, but I mean, the heck, they gave Disney like that honorary for Snow White and the Seven
Yeah.
Dwarfs because that was something that had never been done before.
Yeah.
They could have given them like, hey, y'all did something with film, like. you launched the whole shared universe concept.
Yeah,
like
just
that
some kind
wasn't
of a
a
new
film,
achievement
so-
in film or
Yeah.
something like that.
And they
but-
probably did. And there's obviously not just the Oscars that are televised. There's Oscars for, technical achievements and whatnot behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So there's sometimes things that aren't televised that still are awarded to those films.
Yeah.
However, I will say I think it only makes sense for them to have pushed it back. However, I still think this is going to be a very poor year for Oscars.
Oh yeah.
As far as what's releasing, like you said, smaller films. The thing is I don't know about Cannes. I don't know about
BAFTA was pushed back
Sundance
to
Yeah.
April also.
Okay.
2 weeks before the Oscars.
And see, and that's the thing. I don't know with these other smaller film festivals in which a lot of times some award-worthy films get bought up early on from the film festivals, distributed widely, and then they go out and are given a nomination later in the year. And, I don't know if a lot of those film festivals have been canceled, how many circulated films are there going to be that even come up during award season? Or is it going to be our typical onslaught of blockbusters with a little,
sprinkling of
yeah.
more deeper content. This year's gonna be really interesting for the Oscars, anyways. I mean, you have the COVID-19 outbreak, so that everything's pushed back. There's less films releasing, and then outside of that, not to get political, but there is a lot of cultural things happening.
Boom, we're
that
moving
are-
on to
yeah.
topic
I'm
two.
just saying,
Yeah.
and it's going to affect. It's already affecting the Oscars. They've already announced changes in that regard that will start taking effect not this upcoming year, but next year. And it's very interesting to see. Like,
And it already instituted changes that were in
in
effect,
this year.
Yeah.
But that doesn't include the. We can get into the topic as the
Yeah, go ahead.
diversity inclusions. They're talking about the Oscars. They're going to change the eligibility. Eligibility. Wow. They're going to
Hillbilly
change.
Elegy
Yeah.
coming out from Ron
They're gonna-
Howard
the-
next
They're
year.
going to change the eulogy for the in memorial. No, the eligibility requirements are going to change and include certain diversity stipulations. And we've already seen where the Oscar kind of nitpicks like who they choose to win things based off of what cause they want to try to promote anyway.
Right.
And like I said, I'm not trying to get political anyways. I'm just saying the fact that to create stipulations around something so like divisive as diversity anyways brings the question, is it now about who makes the best picture, or is it about who
Who's the
includes
most
the most?
inclusive?
Yes, who's
Yeah.
the most inclusive?
Well, and that's kind of for one, just to kind of clarify. So some of the changes that were already in place happened back with the Oscars So White controversy. I think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And they brought about the whole, it was called, I believe it was called, was it A2020? I think is
That's what the
Yeah.
initiative is called.
A
Yeah.
2020. And so that was the first initiative, and that had to do with the amount of, I think it was within the Board of Governors itself.
Yeah.
And having a certain amount of diverse people on the board,
Mm-hmm.
whether they be women or people of color. And so you have that initiative already having taken place, and then there's another initiative that they just announced recently that is going to be, like you said, not for this coming, that's not going to impact directly this coming Oscars, but the following Oscars year on after year, and that is called Aperture 2021, I believe.
Yeah.
And so what that is particularly doing, I think, there's like 3 or 4 main big changes. One of them being, like you've already alluded to, the 10 films. Now, yes, it has been possible, I think, for the last 4 or 5 years
Since
that
the Dark
10
Knight, yeah.
Since the Dark Knight controversy, 10 films could be nominated.
Yeah, up to 10 films. Yeah.
Up to 10 films could be nominated, but you didn't absolutely need 10 films.
It's based on a voting ratio. If
Yeah.
everybody voted on the best picture, and if so many films got over a certain number of votes, they would be included in the nominees. Now, if only 8 movies got higher than that number of votes, then only 8 movies were nominated.
And what they're saying now is that's going to automatically be reverted to 10 films. So no matter what, if 10 films are topping the charts of voted on for Best Picture,
Yep.
then it will definitely be at least 10 films.
Yeah.
Now, my only problem with that, as I was talking to you on the phone earlier,
Yeah.
Keith, was I was just a little bit concerned because I was like, doesn't the ratio system already take care of that? Because if you're already voting in terms of a ratio, well, then you're picking the best films that are nominated. We've seen years where it has been 8 films, but we've also seen where all 10 slots were picked. This past year was 10.
9? Was it 10?
Or was it 9? I think it was 9.
But
Yeah.
even still, we all kind of felt like Ford v Ferrari didn't really
even
deserve
really need. Yeah.
yeah, deserve to be in there. So it's one of those things where I agree with like I understand like their point of, well, it will be the 10 best films, but I'm like, we already have years where not 10 films are that
Right.
great, so what it's going to be is 5 extremely good films that deserve
And
Best
then
Picture,
5 that
and
we
then-
have to put on here,
and then
to
5
fill the
that we
space.
think
Well,
that fit
Yeah.
fit whatever. It could be 5 that fit the diversity model, 5 that
Yeah.
fit this, 5 that way
Yeah.
they could just say, well, we included this. See, look, they're
Well, and we've
nominated.
already made that joke.
Yeah.
We've made that joke several times on here of what we consider to be the top 5 and the bottom 5.
But it kind of allows them to have their cake and eat it too. They could still award whatever movie they want to award and say, well, we were inclusive because, see, that was nominated. It never had a chance of winning, but it was nominated.
And that's not to say that sometimes those films, I mean, like you just pointed it out with Ford v Ferrari, has nothing diverse about it per se. But the fact is we didn't think it deserved to be included. So the question is that is going to be what is, I guess, the point of contention. Are some of the films that are included in those 10 coming up, are they doing it for diversity's sake, or are they doing it because it truly deserves to be in that category?
Yeah.
But at
and
the end
only
of the
time
day,
can tell that, though. We have
Right.
what we think is going to happen.
well, and honestly, look at where we are. We're viewing all the Academy Award Best Picture winners from the times of old since the
we've seen
Academy
how that's
existed.
gone so far.
True, but we also have not really compared it to the films they've been nominated against.
That's true.
And
yeah.
so there are times where we know that even the Best Picture winner is not technically what we consider to be the Best Picture of that year. I am, of all the changes coming forth, I'm actually okay with this one. It doesn't really, I don't think it's going to hurt anything. Again, I think you're going to have those bias moments where, sneakingly behind, closed doors, you're going to have members of the Academy snickering and saying, yeah, I can't believe they were nominated.
Yeah.
I mean, we always have those ballots that come out, the anonymous ballots that are just brutal
Yeah.
in terms of their what they consider to be like, they give their honest opinion, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're not glowing reviews at all. But the other big thing that came out of this decision was the enacting of the Board of Governors. So now they had limitless terms,
Yeah.
but they had the ability to have 2 consecutive terms back to back. The terms are 3 years, 3-year terms. They could have 6 years total before they had to take 2 years off, and then they could come back for 2 more consecutive terms, and they could do that an unlimited amount of times.
Yeah.
That is no longer the case. Now they can do the same thing, so it'll be 2 terms consecutive, 3 years in each term. They still have to take the 2 years off, but now they can't do it for an unlimited amount of times. They can only serve up to 12 years. So they have to basically be elected to the board 12 or 6 times, basically.
Yeah, basically. I'm not entirely against that, because I think anytime you can change, and it's kind of different because, I mean, obviously, like, you're running a business. If you're running a business, like, you're not going to try to change out your CEO, like,
Yeah.
well, you can't have this concept. But as far as like voting on Best Pictures, I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to want to have
Agreed.
different mindsets, like, be
Right.
on the board to judge what are the best pictures. Because when you have the same people year after year after year, you
Yep.
start getting the same type of Best Picture.
Yeah,
It's
so
still-
their taste isn't going to change.
Yes.
And as long as they're voting on it, I mean, all of them they're trained to have an unbiased look on all of
They're
these
supposed
movies.
to,
They're
yeah.
supposed to, but we know from the winners themselves that can't be the case all the time. So to me, to have them switched out, the only problem I have is it says here that they can have up to 9 years. Then they have to go on a 2-year hiatus, and then come back and serve 3 more. And I'm like, seriously though, 9 years consecutively that the same people are deciding the fate.
Oh, I thought it
of-
was still
No, it
they
says
said
they
9?
can serve up to 9 years. Then they have to take a 2-year hiatus, and then they can come back and serve 3 more years for a maximum of 12.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
so that's like 9 years in a row that they get to.
That's a decade
Yeah,
that they get
I
to
don't,
dictate
I don't
what's
like
Best
that.
Picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like that at
And
all.
well, and I will say the only thing that I see, at least I didn't know. I actually overlooked that. I thought it was still they had to do 6 years.
They can do a
2-year
first
break.
and second term back to back, and then
Okay.
yeah, they'll be allowed to complete their 9-year service before an obligated 2-year hiatus, after which eligibility renews
Wow.
for one additional and final 3-year term for a maximum of 12.
Yeah. See, I don't know if I do like that. Because to me, the one thing that I liked about this change was that they were limiting the amount of terms the Board of Governors could have anyway. I liked the fact that they were saying after 12 years, it doesn't matter in what combination you had those 12 years, but after 12 years, you can't serve on the board of governors.
I think
it
you're
also says
both right, actually.
It also says that if they've already served multiple terms exceeding 12 years, they'll be limited to one additional term.
Yes, they're kind of grandfathered in.
Yeah.
But that's
more
what I
or
say.
less.
You're both right, because it is all new members can only serve permitted the 2-3 year terms. Current members that are like going into their third term, they're not going to force them to step down for 2 years. So if you're already like going to be going into a third term, they're going to allow you to go ahead and do that, and then have to do the 2 year break.
And
So
then
you were
and
both
then you,
right.
Okay,
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you can only come back
So any
for
new
another 3 years.
For another 3 years.
Gotcha.
But any new board of governor member is required to do the 2-3 year terms, then 2 year break, and then.
I mean, I will
yeah.
say, look, I honestly don't. Here's the thing that I was ultimately, they can say it's for diversity's sake, and I'm okay with that because to me, everything that they've been moving forward on is what I'm more focused on, and that is not just diversity of ethnicity, but also diversity of thought. And to me, as the times change and culturally, and honestly, that is kind of the interesting thing about looking back at the best pictures.
Yeah.
We can judge them with our own critical eye, and we can have our own 2 cents and what we think about them. But those were the best pictures for those people at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like the idea that, again, this is art. This is something that is, it fluctuates. It changes. Flavors change. Tastes change.
Yep.
And I do think that as a body of artistic creatures grows or changes with the times, however so, it at least gives you an introspective look at how those people arrived at the decisions they made then. I'm not saying that all the decisions are going to be 100% positive or the changes are 100% positive. I think time will tell.
Yeah.
But I do think that the way they're looking at this and the way they're approaching it was saying we need some varied opinions. That doesn't necessarily mean that the people who are elected are going to just immediately say, well, I'm black and I'm going to only vote for black films, or I'm white and I'm only going to vote for white films.
I 100% agree with having like a diversity of opinions and ideas. That's why I like the idea of having the board of governors change like this, because it's good to have different thought ideas. But that's like you said, that's where like true diversity comes from, is people with varying different ideas, not the same people thinking the same thing over and over.
Yes.
Now, if like these diversity stipulations are along those regards, I think they will get a positive outcome. But if they're like, you have to have this many like X's crossed off and this many of that in your film represented, then at that point it's you kind of shoehorn people into only making a certain type of film, and at that point you do lose true diversity.
Well, and I think they did somewhat kind of already establish that credo with the previous changes from the last year, combating the whole Oscars so white controversy.
Yeah.
Yet it still remains to be seen that, again, you can have the board of governors, dictate, what kind of certain films they're going to, I guess, green light, or because that was one of the other stipulations in there. Obviously, the board of governors is going to have control over, certain production studios and how they fund certain films and certain initiatives. But the fact of the matter is you're still going to have a voting public. Yeah. Of the 9,000 plus member academy voting on what they think is going to win. Mm-hmm. And so I understand why they're making the changes they are, but I don't see it's odd because it's like I don't see so far I haven't seen the academy or movies in general being something that is only geared towards a certain type of people.
No.
Well, that's the thing.
And I'm not saying it's going to be.
I'm not either, and it's a good thing. But I just don't think that's been. I just feel like the Academy is trying to jump on something because right now it's the cultural hotbed, and so they're trying to kind of catch themselves before they step in it. And I'm like, well, you haven't even stepped in it. Like there's certain things you don't have to admit to when you're not guilty. And I just think that they're so often trying to point the finger at themselves and say, we were wrong, we're terrible at this. And I'm like, I don't know of any instance where you have been. Even the Oscars so white controversy was kind of particularly, it was kind of, to me, it was honestly despicable because you had people like Alejandro Inarritu nominated and winning
for Revenant,
Revenant in back-to-back years.
Yeah.
And then you had,
because of Birdman.
Alfonso Cuarón. Also, I mean, it's like you've had other people of color who've been nominated. It just hasn't been, black people.
Yeah.
And so I think, especially now with the
I mean,
current,
look at the last winner, Bong Joon-ho, Asian man.
yeah. North Korean or South Korean, and it's like, so you have these instances in which I think it's been telling that the Academy has changed in a diverse way. But I think what we've always rallied for here, and at least what I see in these changes, and what I don't think is a bad thing is there's never a wrong way to include diversity of thought. But ultimately, I think that we've even often discussed on this film so many times that has nothing to do with the race or ethnicity of the cast or the crew or the director, but ultimately the quality of the film itself.
Yeah.
And we've seen, fantastic films made by a myriad of people, and we've also seen bad films made by a myriad of people.
Yeah.
And it really just comes down to, sometimes there are just bad films and there are just good films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how much you change up diversity. If you don't have that diversity of thought pushing the medium forward,
You need the right
you're
people.
Gonna fail.
You need the right people. I mean, because like you said, you have Alexandro Inarritu. You had Bong Joon-ho. You even have Jordan Peele, who's been nominated because he makes fantastic movies.
Absolutely.
And those are all diverse people. And that's what you need. It's not just we need to make sure that every person's represented. It's that you need to have those fantastic filmmakers that are diverse, like Jordan Peele, Inarritu, Bong Joon-ho. I don't know. I couldn't shorten
Yeah.
his name. I don't know how I was going to do
Yeah.
that.
Bong Joon-ho.
Yeah.
Ho.
I guess Joon-ho. Yeah,
you
you
got
have
Ho.
Ho over there. And it's like yes, reward the ones that make good movies, but don't just put people in the spotlight. I might catch flack for this. Don't put Spike Lee in the
Yeah, well,
spotlight
I was
for a movie
actually-
that's not that good.
I was getting ready
Yeah.
to mention, to me, I just watched Spike Lee's new film the other night, and there's 3 white people in the whole movie. And so I'm what I'm worried about is that all of this gets to the point where now for a film to be eligible for a Best Picture Oscar, they have to meet a certain inclusivity criteria. Like you have to have one of the main cast or at least 3 of the main cast be African American or whatever, or your film's not going to be considered. And I'm just like, is it going to go both ways, though? Because when it comes to people are already talking about Spike Lee's film, which is not at all Oscar-worthy, but a film that's primarily African-American, there's literally three white people in the whole movie, and I'm like, how does that meet diversity standards? It doesn't meet diversity standards. So is it going to go both ways, or is it only going to be one-sided?
And that's what I think
that's
is
what I'm
unclear.
really worried
That's-
about.
That's
the
what
Academy
I think is
making
unclear
these
right
guidelines.
now, because the guidelines don't stipulate anything.
No,
like
they
that.
don't.
But I think, like you said, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That slippery slope of going down and changing things for the sake of change when nothing has really proven to be an outcry. I mean, yes, we've heard outcries from the industry, but typically it's from people who are just they're smaller groups making a louder. You know, it's not a majority of the 9,000 voices that are in.
No.
The industry and in the Academy. And I'm not saying, like, I understand that black people are a minority. I understand that Asians are a minority. And yes, I'm not saying that, but I even think there's a minority of black people and a minority of Asians in the filmmaking community that are raising hell about the way in which they've been treated or the way in which their films have been shown. And I think we've made tremendous strides. It's not even about making strides. I just think there's been tremendous freedom
Yes,
in
absolutely.
the filmmaking community.
I say in the even before, because it's funny, and it's like you said, like even before the Academy started making a move towards being diverse, within this last decade, you have seen a lot of diverse directors up and coming. You have Ava DuVernay, you have Greta Gerwig, you have Inarritu, Bong Joon-ho, Alfonso Cuarón, Jordan Peele. There's been a lot of diverse directors that have made amazing movies that have been nominated and have won, and that actually started before the Academy jumped on the diversity bandwagon. If you
Right.
actually go back and look all the way back with 12 Years a Slave
Yes,
when it won.
that was a
Yes,
fantastic movie.
It was a fantastic
Yeah.
movie, and that actually was before
Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah, Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah.
And it's like it's funny
Which
that
was directed by Danny Boyle.
it was.
Well,
it was
true,
directed by a
but-
white man, but
But
you do have a lot of diverse, and I love all of those movies. And I'm definitely not against seeing diverse movies at the Oscars. But the thing is, all of those movies deserved to be there.
Yes.
It wasn't because they were diverse; it was because they were fantastic movies and deserved
Yes.
to be there.
Right. And that ultimately is, at the end of the day, what I am going to always hold as my criteria. And I know, and that's not to say there aren't, minority films that can be made that don't deserve to be included. It's just I would hope.
Oh, Tyler Perry's Medea films don't deserve to be
No,
there.
no,
I'm sorry.
and exactly, and that's the thing. And I'm not saying that anybody's
I
clamoring
don't think
for
anybody,
those.
is
I'll
making a
say-
case for that at all.
Say
But
his wouldn't meet the diversity standards either.
Well, but that's the
I'm
thing.
just saying.
To them, though, I know that they're specifically gonna say diversity means including minorities in a majority. And but my thing is if they end up getting to the point where they which they haven't yet, they haven't set up any kind of criteria that is demanding like one of the 10 best picture films has to have a cast that is dominated by minority being majority minority. You know, it's like if they don't make up criteria like that, then I'm okay with that.
Right.
Because if
Yeah.
that's the case, it's like I don't expect to go over to China and see, we have a lot of American films that are blockbusters over there.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Chinese box office, a lot
it's
of their
mostly Chinese films.
mostly Chinese films, and I expect that there.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is I think Hollywood already does a great job offering up diverse views and diverse opinions from multiple ethnic groups, multiple different personalities, multiple different ideas and from different backgrounds. And I think that's the beauty of Hollywood in general. And that's the beauty of film is it gives you a personal way to connect with somebody that you might not often come across or that you might not connect with. And to me, I just feel like so much of these efforts that the Academy is putting into place are, again, treating a symptom that's not there or hasn't been shown to be there, especially like you said, Keith, within the last decade, we've seen multiple different iterations of diverse
You
films.
see that happening everywhere right now, though. Everybody's trying to like cover their asses before anything actually is happening. I mean, that's what Warner Brothers has done with Gone with the Wind, which is our next topic. Is before there was even a controversy, they wanted to make sure they were safe, so they pulled that movie off of HBO Max.
Right. So, well, let's talk about that. So, Gone with the Wind was pulled from HBO Max, but
Not
it was
permanently,
not permanently.
yeah.
It was to add a disclaimer to say that, you know, obviously Warner Brothers does not stand behind the messages within the film that include racist behavior. So, but they're putting that disclaimer on there, and then they're putting it back up on HBO Max.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we've heard multiple outcries from, you know, people in the industry saying that, Gone with the Wind is not so great, you know, that it does deserve to be pulled. Queen Latifah actually came out and said that that Hattie McDaniel, even though she was the first African-American best supporting actress winner, and granted, what she, said was the truth, and it was pretty awful that Hattie McDaniel had to sit outside the room. They only brought her in to accept the award.
She didn't get to actually attend the Oscars.
Yeah,
which is
it's
crap.
absolutely pitiful.
Yeah.
And despicable. And yet even the speech that she offered up and was written by the studio for her to say, it was scripted. And so I mean, the thing is though, even in that atrocity, she still won the Academy Award.
Yes, she did.
She still earned that Academy Award.
She earned that award. And to try to say, because there's been arguments like that, and to say, well, she portrayed a very stereotypical, like, racist caricature. And it's like, yes and no, but she was proud of her work. And she was proud to win that award. And it's kind of like a slap in her face to say, well, even though you did a fantastic job and you were proud of it, you were just doing what the white person said, so it's really not worth anything. And it's like, that's really crappy to her
An
memory.
actor's job is to do what the director says. I'm just saying, like, that's your job.
And I'm saying, and that doesn't defend,
well,
like,
doesn't
that
mean
doesn't
that it's
defend
like-
the stereo, like, that doesn't defend.
No, I'm
Well,
just-
for one, we already screw Queen Latifah for
Yes.
first disparaging remarks against Hattie McDaniel, saying that because she was playing a stereotypical black woman for that day,
So
she
is
was
every guy
she
in
was
the Spike Lee
also-
movie I
yeah.
just saw.
yes,
She was also the I'll double check this, but she was also, I believe, the first African American to be played over the radio, because she was a singer as well, and she was actually the first one to get played over the radio nationwide.
And here the fact of the matter is that there have been people who have paved the way for every single one of us to have the luxuries that we have today. And the fact of the matter is that Hattie McDaniel is a standout actress and a standout, person of color that paved the way for Queen Latifah to speak and have the platform she does.
She was the first.
And she was one of the
You
people
have
that
to.
paved the way. And so you can't
Yes.
sit there and say that she doesn't deserve or that we can't honor her in that way because white people only saw her as a black woman and that's why she won the award. No, she was somebody who played her role to the best of her ability and won that award, and it was the Academy that
It was the
that honored that.
1940s. They weren't just going to award her an award just because she was black. They wouldn't have cared back then.
That's
the horrible truth. They wouldn't have given
No.
a crap.
Yep.
But she did deserve it. She was fantastic.
And so, but I also think too, one other huge thing. I'm not about to, Warner Brothers is a business. I don't think it's the wrong move for them to take down the film, put up a disclaimer. But here's my issue: if you're going to put up a disclaimer because it is one of the most notable films in film history. The fact of the matter is that I think you need to put up a disclaimer for every movie that depicts anything that you don't agree with. Are you going to sit there and put up something for The Godfather and saying, well, we don't agree with the mafia.
Yeah.
We don't agree with what the behind the scenes stuff. Are you going to put up with things like Cimarron?
Yeah.
That was another Best Picture winner
Cimarron
that actually came out and had a way worse depiction
it
of
was
a black character.
Way worse than Gone with the Wind, and it's still on HBO Max. They didn't pull it. They haven't pulled it. Why? Because nobody knows what Cimarron is.
Exactly.
Right.
But again, I think that shows the ignorance
Yeah.
of this initiative. The fact is that there is, to me, that's the tried and true message here. How can you sit here and speak on diversity's sake, but then you're not willing to look at all of the ways in which you are across the board discriminatory? If you are someone who's going to make this remark and make this action, then you have to look across your entire catalog and you basically have to go back and say, if I'm gonna come at myself or come at our catalog of artful films and display them in such a way that people can see them, but we're going to say, hold up, we're not guilty of it. This doesn't actually bring forth our views and opinions.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is from what I could tell, even 2-3 years ago, nobody thought that movie studios putting out films that they absolute 100% agreed with the messages of the films they were producing.
Right.
Now, people can sit there and say, well, that's an atrocity. That needs to change. And I would say, no, that's the point of having a free press, free speech, is that you can actually put these things on film and you can tell the story you want to tell without the fear of it being censored or without the fear of it being tarnished. Let it out in the public and let the public decide. And if the public chooses that, no, this is not something we want to represent, I'm sorry, but that's been what this entire last 2 weeks has been about with these protests. It's been about people coming together and saying, we won't stand for this anymore. It takes a large group like that to finally stand up and say, we're not going to accept this. Same with films. The reason we've seen the diverse nature in the last decade of film is not because the Academy insisted that's the way it was.
No.
It was because studios started producing diverse films and actually people went to go see them. Because I can guarantee you, nobody would go see them if they weren't good.
Yeah. Well, it's because I'll take Alfonso Cuarón, who's gotten Birdman, and then of course what was Roma? He was nominated for Roma. He started, one of his earliest films was the third Harry Potter film. It's like he started from nothing and he proved himself and worked the way up, and that's how it works with anything. Is you have to have that mindset of, I'm going to accomplish this.
Yes.
And when you have people like that who fight for it, that's when you get the real change. Not when you have a bunch of board members that are sitting around like, well, we don't want to get in trouble, so let's just do this and this to cover our butts and hope we're okay, because that's not actually making any change. That's just making sure that you don't get in trouble for something that may or may not even happen.
Right. Yeah. One of our viewers, he pointed out, are they going to change Blazing Saddles?
Yeah.
And we actually talked about
we
that
did
last
in a
week.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I must say that I respect Warner Brothers in this regard, is they don't edit any of their films. They do
True.
say, they have
True.
made the statement, we put a disclaimer,
Right.
and the disclaimer states that these things happened in the past, they're not right now, they weren't right back then, but we're not going to hide them, because to edit them out is to act like they never existed.
Exactly.
And that's
Right.
wrong. And I agree with Warner Brothers.
That's
in that.
literally like
Yeah.
bulldozing
Pretending-
Auschwitz to the
pretending-
ground
yeah.
and saying, the
It never
Holocaust
happened.
never happened.
Yeah.
Pretending something didn't happen is not the right way to address it. So I do respect Warner Brothers, unlike Disney, who has edited some of their films, for saying, no, we're not going to edit that out. We're just going to say that wasn't right and leave it as it is for you to judge yourself.
Absolutely. And I stand by that too. That's the
Now
only
that-
thing that I...
But I think the point that I was trying to make with Blazing Saddles and he was trying to make too is that it's a double standard. Blazing
Yeah.
Saddles is a very well-known film.
Yes.
Especially amongst comedies. So
But it's also
to have
known-
Gone with, I understand
Yeah.
Gone with the Wind has the notoriety of being an Oscar winner and one of the greatest films
Well, not
ever
just that.
made.
It's not a comedic spoof.
But
film.
but again, it's
Blazing
just
Saddles
like Blazing
point is
Saddles
kind of
is
it's making
pretty,
fun of. I mean, it's very bad, but it's kind
yes.
of making fun of the fact that it's bad. Like it
Right.
knows it's doing it on
blatantly
purpose.
being racist
Yeah.
on purpose to show how bad it is.
But
Yeah.
if you,
Yeah.
but whether you're making fun of it or
Agreed.
not, you're still
Yeah, it's still showcasing it.
racism.
Yes.
So I'm just like, why aren't they just making a disclaimer for that film or any of the others? What
Well,
is
and
it
I
about
think-
Gone with the Wind
yes.
that requires it
I
to
think
have
that's
a
the question you
disclaimer?
have to ask yourself throughout
Yeah.
all of history. The fact of the matter is the moment you become self-policing is the moment that you have to keep in check now whatever your ideology is. That look, businesses are amoral. Businesses do not give a shit about what the opinions of the day are as long as they're making their bottom line and they themselves are profitable.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, studios and movie businesses are in it for one thing, and that's your cash money.
Mm-hmm.
And so all they care about is making their bottom line and becoming profitable.
Yeah.
So they can make more movies that do the same thing. From a business standpoint, that's all they're looking at.
Yeah.
Now, of course, they're going to beat the humdrum, drum of trying to come together and be inclusive. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But believe you me, 50 years from now, if the political culture or social status changes, they're going to swing. The pendulum's going to swing that
way too, yeah.
And they're going to put disclaimers on whatever those movies are that they want to now decry as. I mean, I see it as nothing more than the same thing that was going on with religious institutions going against certain movies that were. I mean, look at The Last Temptation of Christ.
Yeah.
You had several churches that were trying to ban the film from even being released, and they had never even seen the film. Now, how can you sit here and tell me that that same religious persecution is not the same kind of persecution that's going on today with these films that are portraying a time in history that is unchangeable? It is done. It's in the past. We have to look at it to learn from it and move forward. And to me, that's why I'm okay with the disclaimer.
Yeah.
But I'm more okay with it because I know they're not editing the film.
That's my point.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm okay with them pulling it and all that because, I mean, I think that's silly. Everybody knows what Gone with the Wind is and what's in it. You don't really have to pull it like that.
Yes.
But I much rather them at least put the disclaimer on it than to hack the film apart because it shows things that they
or even
feel-
take it down
yeah.
entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we've beat this with a dead horse.
Yeah.
We had a lot of major topics this week, though.
we did.
had to
We
dive
did.
into it. But, I mean, we're already pushing a little late here, so I guess we need to
Yeah.
move into a little bit more of a friendlier topic. So let's move into our relationship segment.
Let me tell you about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the moon up above and a thing called love.
Oh, I love that at the end. That's
Boo. I just want to be contrary.
You
Boo.
are contrary. You never go
Love
with the masses.
stinks.
Love stinks.
I'm gonna go watch The Wedding Singer.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Gosh.
That's Jimmy Morris saying that ain't
That
no
is
sock in my
right.
crotch.
So we're already running
Yeah,
on
let's
the
go.
clock here.
All
So
right.
what do we got?
Love thy neighbor
Love that.
Yeah.
is
I've
our
heard that.
relationship segment. And we thought, why not?
What's already been the topic pretty much this whole episode.
Yeah.
true. So that's our episode for this week. No, I think that,
Dissenting opinions.
yes. I mean, in the midst of dissenting opinions,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is more now true than ever.
Opinions are like a-holes. Everybody's got one.
Yeah, but some are bigger than others.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, just the in general, your neighbor, your friends, your loved ones, your family. People have varying different viewpoints.
Yes.
Whether it be politics, religion, sports, anything. People have what the things they believe in and their viewpoint, and that's not always the same as everybody else's. And how do you react with those people? Because there's some people that I'm more a person where I'm going to be civil to you no matter what you think, whether I disagree with you or not.
Yeah.
I might tell you I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong, but I'm not going to treat you differently
Or
than I would
ridicule
treat.
or
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people that would write you off or say, if you don't believe the way I do, then you're ignorant. I'm going to. There's some that would like to do you physical harm. I mean, we hear all the time. Robert De Niro's still talking about wanting to. His latest thing is he wants to punch Trump in the face with a bag of dog crap, and I'm like, what is he?
Yeah.
He said he wants to hit him in the face with
I
a
just
bag
think
of
it's
poop.
funny. It's just like people think Trump talks out of his ass, and I'm like, so does Hollywood.
Yeah, all
And-
the time.
And my thing is, whether you disagree or not, there is a way to treat people civilly. And
Yeah.
is that the mindset you believe people should have, or
No,
Right.
I agree. I think, again, a lot of diversity and a lot of changes throughout our culture. I think ultimately what it comes down to is being a decent human being and your individual, your morals and your values. And I think when you're raised without the morals and values of respecting others, I think you're on your pathway to where we've gotten the world's greatest evils, whether that's Hitler or Mussolini or it's like Pol Pot. It's like you have these people who took advantage of people's insecurities and people's ability to not stand up and fight for themselves. And I think the one beautiful thing that I've seen over the last several weeks with all the protests has been that, yes, there has been a large outcry for civil liberties to be put back into place at the center of focus of our criminal justice system. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think that has truthfully emboldened a lot of people to speak up that normally wouldn't. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that it excuses the people who have taken advantage of those protests, the peaceful ones, and chose to go the violent route. And I think you still have seen a lot of people come out and speak out against those things. And I think, again, you see a lot of those riots and those the rioters that are in the midst of the peaceful protests, they're on the fringes, they're on the fray, but usually those two extremes end up often what gets most people stirred up and gets most people to have
It's
that
also
outcry.
what gets the most attention, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because you have the people that are protesting for a reason that matters, and you have the people that are taking advantage of those protests, like you said, and they're using that as an opportunity to riot and loot and break and destroy property and hurt people, kill people even. And the problem is when all of that happens, that's all you see on the news. You don't see the peaceful protesters and their signs and what they're standing for, which is actually what matters. You only hear the cursing and the violence and all of this that's coming
the
from
unrest.
And it really sucks that the real message is being drowned out by a message of immorality and violence. And I that is what really bothers me about it. While I may not fully understand or could relate to the people that are protesting and the reasons that they're protesting, because I've never suffered police brutality. I've never known anybody that suffered that. I know it happens to every race, but still, I've never been a part of that or known anybody that has, and so it's kind of hard for me. But I respect them exercising their right to the freedom of speech and to peaceful protest. But these other people that are doing this, it drowns out their message.
Yes.
So
it destroys
it just completely destroys it, and that's what kills me. Because you have people that are trying to do the right thing the right way, and it just seems like in our day and age, the right thing is always drowned out by the wrong.
Right.
And that just eats me up.
And I think that's kind of what, instead of focusing on that, that's kind of why we have this relationship segment, and to remind yourself to love thy neighbor, because it is one of those where it's like we can have discourse. And beyond even discourse, it's much more. It's about understanding that, it's not even about the discourse. It's if you love thy neighbor, then love thy neighbor as yourself. Then you have those moments where you start to have that introspective look of how you can relate.
You can't accomplish change. Like that's what people are processing for, is to make a change that matters. You can't accomplish that without having a civil discourse and without having a conversation. If you can't sit down with a person you disagree with to have that discussion about making change and come up with compromises and come up with something, then it's never going to happen. If it's just people beating each other senselessly constantly, that's all you're ever going to get.
Right. And so just sending out that peaceful, loving message to everybody out there. Love thy neighbor. Love the people that you're around.
I
you
won't
love
boo
somebody.
That. I booed earlier, but I won't boo that.
Don't boo that.
Don't boo that.
Don't boo that, boo.
All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. As always, we want to thank you all for tuning in and watching us every week here on Facebook and YouTube Live. That's right. We're here live every Tuesday nights, 9 p.m.
Yes.
But you know what? We already teased it at the beginning. I'm just going to get it out of the way again real quick. You know what? You can email us. That's right. Email us right there at the bottom of your screen. RMPodcast at redmondproductions.com. Is that right, Keith?
Yeah, right there, right?
Yeah, he got it.
I'm pretty good at it now. I know right where to point.
That's right. And where else could they go, Sean, if they just wanted to see past stuff?
Well, they could check out our website at redmoonproductions.com.
Boom! That's right.
It's pretty wicked. I always wanted to say that.
Wicked
It's
smart.
wicked, dude.
It's wicked
smart.
Yeah.
Wicked smart. Oh, smart guy. Smart
Smart
Pac.
guy.
I'm gonna park my car. Go park my car in the yard.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna go watch The Town.
Also, just a shout out to
Oh.
Jacob Burris for
Yes, for
contributing
giving
the
us
news.
our topic
Yes,
this week.
thank you, sir.
All right, guys. Until next time, I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and
Keith Cheatham.
we'll see you next week.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.